Welcome to Green and Red, Scrappy Politics for Scrappy People, a regular podcast on radical environmental and anti-capitalist politics, brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, in Berkeley, California, and Bob is off on assignment in frosty Houston, Texas. But today another in our series on arts and culture, where we talk about different medium which raise political consciousness. We've done these on movies, we've done these on music, we've done these on books. And so today we're going to be talking about books, a form of books today. And joining me is Liz Francis, who is the founder and publisher of Street Noise Books. Liz, welcome to the Green and Red podcast.
Thank you, Scott. I'm really happy to be here.
And we're going to be talking with Liz today about graphic novels, comics. Graphic novels are a top-selling publication, but Street Noise actually strives to raise political consciousness around with what they're publishing. They have a whole catalog of graphic novels and comics that include with topics like Gaza, the climate crisis, immigration, mental health, LGBQT issues, gender issues, and much more. Liz is like I said, the founder and publisher of Street Noise Books, had worked as an art director and book designer in the big publishing houses of New York. But in 2016, after the 2016 presidential election, wanted to advocate for the power of love and compassion in the face of hate and oppression. And so, Liz, maybe you could let's start with that. Can you go a little bit more into why you started Street Noise Books?
Sure. It was directly a result of the sort of horror and despair I felt after the first Trump election. And what I was feeling was really shock at the hatred and the othering that I saw happening, being spearheaded by our commander in chief, but being spouted by everyone across the country. So many people. I just couldn't understand where that was all coming from. And it's always been a sort of my biggest sadness in life is to witness people's inhumanity to other people. And I did some real soul searching and thought hard about maybe because I hadn't been part of the solution. I know I'm sort of spouting all these things, but that maybe I was part of the problem because I hadn't taken an active role in trying to create the world that I thought should exist, a world full of compassion and humanity, that I couldn't criticize it if I wasn't doing something about it. And I realized that what I'm good at doing is making books. And I also realized that I believe that books have an incredible ability to open people's hearts and minds to someone else's reality, someone else's truth, especially graphic novels or illustrated books. I feel like the combination of art and text really amplifies the meaning to such a huge extent. When you're seeing, not only reading what it's like to be someone else and live their life, but you're also seeing it through their eyes. If they're drawing the art, this is how they see their reality. And you almost can't come away from that without being affected by it. That's my experience anyway. So I thought maybe I can do something by helping to provide a platform for voices of people that weren't being heard elsewhere. So that I really made that the mission of this new publishing house that I wanted to launch, was to take risks that the big publishers with all their investors and overseers and corporate crap aren't willing to take risks with. So I started a publishing company. And yeah, go ahead.
Just to dive into that a little bit, within this sort of big publishing sector, corporate sector, the corporate publishing sector. It is there a lot of risk mitigation going on as far as what they're publishing, what the stories they are telling, things along those lines? It's a lot of lawyers and investors having a lot to say.
Definitely. Well, or even if it's not even lawyers it's the market, and it's like if you're one of the big 5 or 6, because I was working at Scholastic, which is I worked at a number of the other ones too, Penguin Random House and Macmillan. But lastly, I had worked at Scholastic. And if they're trying to sell books all across America, they have to sort of play to, or they feel like sometimes they have to play to the middle, and they can't go too far in one direction or another, because it might
Kind of like the
offend.
Democratic Party.
Exactly, right. So, they don't want to offend anyone. So, and at the time, there was a lot of, now DEI has become this radical thing. Who would have thought? Because at the time, DEI was really an important concept at most of these publishing houses. They really, I think their heart was really in the right place and wanted to have diversity. There was a lot of the big movement of we need diverse books, especially this was really important in the children's space, which I applaud 100%. But I felt that it was only going so far. They were only looking for diversity as long as it fit into sort of a cleaned up, nice little, tied in a little nice little neat bow package. And life isn't really like that. Life is more messy, and people's realities are more messy than that. And the answers aren't always so clear. It doesn't always work out that there's a simple answer or a happy ending or whatever. And those were the stories that interested me, the ones that didn't have those easy answers in the end. And that was what I felt I wasn't able to work on when I was working at the big publishers. So that's where I wanted to make a difference. And I also feel that when you're trying to provide a platform for marginalized people who have not been given privilege, who have, a huge amount of talent, a great story to tell, maybe are really talented artistically, whatever. But if they haven't been given the privileges along the way, they may not know how to polish their work and make it, perfect to pitch to one of the big 5. And so I tended to find like debut authors who didn't know even how to get their stories in front of a big publisher. Or a book that, someone at a big publisher might say, well, this has some merit, but, XYZ, and I would take the time and effort to hire a brilliant editor and work with the author and get it to be the book that it was really meant to be in the first place.
I believe it's on the about page of Street Noise books. As I was looking at it, there's you all
Of our
have a couple
website.
of your website. Yeah, you have a couple of quotes. One I pulled, which I thought was particularly interesting. As part of a greater community of creative, engaged, and free-thinking people, we're empowered to affect change and build the world we want around us. And so I'm assuming that you have staff, and then I'm assuming that you have a group of artists and creators and writers and so on and so forth that you work with. And I'm wondering how you see yourselves as empowering that change.
Well, I think this is what's so important. I mean, I wrote that the quotes that are on the website, or the thoughts that are on the website, were written back during the first Trump administration.
Mhm.
And I wish they weren't timely anymore. I wish we didn't need them.
Right.
But unfortunately, we need them way more now than we did then, even. And I think one of the things that we need, and that I keep hearing now, is that we need to hold on to community. We need to build community. That if we are isolated, that's one way that we can be beaten down, is to make us each feel that we're alone in our thoughts, and that everybody else is on board, with this new regime. But in fact, there are so many of us who are not on board with what's going on right now. And we need to come together, to talk to one another, to work together. I think, artists are really where the hope, for me, it's where the hope lies. And those are all the arts, like the visual arts, film, music. For me, that's always been when I am feeling the worst about humanity. I look at art or I listen to music and I think, no, there's hope. There's hope because we're able to create these amazing things. So we can't be that awful as a species, And so as a creative community, we have to support one another. And so Street Noise is that. We are a family. We are all the people that I work with, who each one of the authors who put themselves completely into these books and share this, and they are often make themselves so vulnerable by sharing their stories. And then that I hire individual editors to work with me on each book, and designers, and proofreaders, and publicity managers, and all these people who put their heart and soul into these projects. And then what you create is something that then gets launched out into the world and then becomes a part of all these other people's lives. It's really quite astonishing when you think about it, that you're forming community within Street Noise, but then that community extends out to everyone who reads the books. So it's pretty exciting.
The production of any piece of art to me is just this even just the process, regardless of the end product, it's just this sort of, always to me, a major achievement. I'm on Goodreads, that book social media, and I always give every book 5 stars because I just know that the process that went into it, except for some books where I have to read her out, like business for work or whatever. But like, I always give them 5 stars because I understand the process that went into sort of creating and writing and producing a book or a graphic novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Graphic novels, especially because of all the art, is just such a time-consuming and gut-wrenching experience. But they're also really, really powerful tools, not only to transform the people who read the books and the graphic novels, but they actually can have a real transformative effect on the people who are making the books, which I don't even think I had considered that until I started working so seriously on graphic novels, that they have this amazing transformative effect and therapeutic effect for people. They're writing about trauma, or they're writing about, things that they've struggled with in their lives, to put that down on paper, not just by writing, but by drawing about it. And some of our books have discussed exactly this process of how comics in particular, the drawing of them and envisioning maybe what happened in your life really changes things in your brain and enables you to process it in a totally different and enlightening way.
You came from the publishing world where definitely it sounds like you worked on non-graphic sort of books. Is there a particular reason that you decided to go the sort of route of graphic novels and illustrated books and comic books for Street Noise?
Well, I think, first of all, it's because I was an art director in my previous life. So I was coming at even the books that I was doing that weren't graphic novels, even if it was, say, a young adult fiction book. I still was looking at it from the design perspective, and I loved the art of the cover and how it was going to look on the page. That's sort of what I get jazzed about. That's what I like to do. So when I started Street Noise, I wanted all of the books that we do to have an art element in them. And most of them are graphic novels. We've done 2 books, one is coming out in a few weeks, that are collections of essays that incorporate art into it.
Eyes on Gaza seemed like that a bit.
Yes, but the other reason, so the one reason is because I wanted to do things that involved art, but also because of what I was saying about this sort of transformative effect. And I felt like if I'm going to do this create this publishing house to try to make a difference in the world and to open up people's minds and hearts and to generate compassion, I really feel like it's it's giving you a leg up when you have art involved. It just gives you that additional tool that will affect people.
Is there any specific audience you've been trying to reach with graphic novels or with the topics? Do y'all have do y'all, I'm assuming if you work with publicity and marketing people that you are thinking about what your audience is, et cetera.
Well, I think if when we started out, I had this idea of I wanted to do nonfiction for young adults because I thought that I really like that time period in your life when you're, let's say, sort of high school going into college, when I feel like this is true for me and for a lot of people that I have known over the years, is that that's a particularly amazing time because you're looking at the world as an adult for the first time and you're so able to see through the bullshit, and and be idealistic. I think over the years we lose that idealism because you have to survive in a way. It's a very tumultuous time in your life, but it's also like such great thinking comes out of that time period because you're envisioning like the world doesn't have to be this way. It could be all these other cool ways. And so I wanted to be there. I wanted to be at that sort of point in people's lives. But then as I started making the books, I realized that the kind of graphic novels that I'm drawn to the category they fall into tends to be adult as opposed to YA. YA has become young adult has younger and younger
Mhm.
over the years, and I often think that people read beyond their age group anyway. So a lot of people, obviously, in high school are reading adult books. I don't think that like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is not a YA book, but a lot of people in high school read it, and are affected by it. So that's sort of the sweet spot of a time of life for me, or a way of thinking about life. I like to get non-graphic novel readers or non-comics readers to read our books. That always sort of makes me extra happy when people say, "Oh, but I've never read a graphic novel." And then I read this one. That happened a lot we had one of our best-selling books of all time is Jim Terry's book, Come Home Indio, which if you or your listeners haven't read it yet, I really encourage you to. It's Jim is half Native and half Irish American, and he's an incredibly gifted cartoonist and has been doing comic arts for years and years and years. It's gotten a lot of starred reviews, and it's a really powerful book. But people have picked it up because of the content, because there aren't that many books out there. There aren't enough books out there talking about Native experience in this country. And so some people have read it who've never read graphic novels before, and then they get really turned on to graphic novel. Or maybe most people have read Mouse, or they've heard of Mouse,
So,
or they've heard of Persepolis, but or Fun Home. Like those are the ones that everybody, or maybe March by John Lewis.
right.
But I like to sort of get people turned on that maybe don't know that much about comics to begin with. And we did have this emphasis on nonfiction. Up until now, every single book we've published is nonfiction. But starting next month, we have our first fiction book coming out. And from then on, it's like open season. We get to do fiction and nonfiction because I realized that there are important stories to be told that will still have sort of the effect of opening people's hearts and minds that aren't true, that are fiction, the book that are either,
Like Steinbeck.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or, yeah, other like science fiction, where people envision another world or whatever. Yeah. So, but all of our books tend to have some element of personalized political type, radical, intersectional vision.
When do we go into that? How would you describe the ethos philosophy of street noise books like that, and just the politics? Where part of what you're doing is raising political consciousness, but talk about the politics where you're raising people's consciousness too.
Well, the mission of Street Noise is that um, to publish books that are unapologetic, authentic, and politically relevant, and to provide a platform for the voices of marginalized people.
Hmm.
I've been called out on the unapologetic thing once on another podcast that I did. Somebody was asking me, like, do you really mean that you're unapologetic? I said, yeah, really, I do. I think that that's not to say that one shouldn't apologize. When one is wrong, one should apologize.
Hmm.
I don't mean it in a hurtful or a braggadocious way or a, cocky way. I mean it in a like strong, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I'm going to advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves. Um, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that for anyone. I think that those days, I was going to say those days are gone, but who wanted those days in the first place? Like, I don't think we should do that. I think we should be honest about what we believe. Street Noise is definitely a leftist um, publisher.
Mhm.
Although haven't really ever written that down anywhere. I would say but we're definitely,
I mean, if you look at your catalog, I'm someone who spends a lot of time in leftist political circles. And
yeah,
looking at your catalog, I would definitely describe it as leftist, left of center. So,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely we are. And, we are intersectional feminist and queer and inclusive. All of those terms mean a lot to me. I think, I think that's the world that I want to live in. And so that's what I'm trying to create through a collection of books.
And to talk about some of the specific books, the first one I'm going to touch on was Eyes on Gaza by Khalid Badouth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly.
Khaled
Um,
B. Yep.
okay. And this one really jumped out at me when I was looking at your catalog and thinking about what to talk to you about. But could you actually talk a little bit about Eyes on Gaza? And then I have some questions about it.
Yes, absolutely. So Khaled Beydoun is a scholar of Islamophobia. He's written two books on one was on American Islamophobia and the second one was on global Islamophobia. And I've known him for years. He's someone who's extremely smart and very articulate and very outspoken in his criticism of Islamophobic uh, things that he sees all around him. And for years, I've been hoping that maybe I'd have a chance to do a book with him. And he came to me with a collection of essays that he had written in real time during the annihilation in Gaza.
Mm.
He wrote them as sort of he's a writer. So as he was trying to process this horrific thing that he was witnessing, he would write essays as it went along, sort of as a way of making sense of it for himself, but also witnessing it and making sure that we didn't forget all these specific things that happened along the way, because they are so horrific and so important for us to not forget and not repeat. And so he came to me and asked me if I would be interested in publishing it, which I was immediately interested. But I told him that I said, Khaled, you know that it has to have art in it for Street Noise to do it, because otherwise it doesn't make sense for Street Noise. We do books with art in them. He said, well, totally cool with that. I don't mind having art in the book. And but we were on a tight schedule because he really wanted the book to come out in time for Ramadan. It comes out in 2 weeks, which is just in time for Ramadan. Yay, we've done it. But I suddenly realized that the way I could make this work, and I think the result is incredible, is that there's another person that I've worked with named Mohammed Sabane, and he's the author and illustrator of a book called Power Born of Dreams, My Story is Palestine, which is an incredible graphic novel that we published back in 2021, and it won the Palestine Book Award for that year. And Joe Sacco, the famous Joe Sacco who wrote Palestine, his graphic novel, Palestine, he wrote he called this book an artistic triumph that will stand as an enduring testament to the spirit of the Palestinian people. Mohammed Sabane is a master. And when I read that to Mohammed, when I read him what Joe Sacco said he just started to cry because he has so much admiration for Joe Sacco. And so Mohammed did this beautiful book with me that won the Palestine Book Award called Power Born of Dreams. And he did it all out of linoleum block printing, which is just really striking and beautiful, black and white, very crisp, and it's amazing. But at the same time, what he does every day, he's a professor, but his other sort of day job is that he makes political cartoons for the Palestine newspaper. And so I realized that he had been drawing cartoons the whole time that Khaled Beydoun had been writing. You do what you need to do to process what's happening, right? So Khaled is writing about the genocide and Mohammed is drawing about the genocide at the same time. Wow. So I thought, well, wait a minute, what if we could combine these two things? What if, and Khaled loved that idea because Mohammed is Palestinian. He is in Ramallah. He's been in Ramallah this whole time. So to have that perspective also was a real nice addition to Khaled's perspective. So we ended up putting, I think it's 60 or 70 pieces of Mohammed's art in the book of Khaled's essays. And it's extremely powerful, I think. I feel that the combination of Khaled's great insight and an analysis of what was happening, along with his emotion and passion and empathy and heartbreak, combines with Mohammed's feeling the same sorts of feelings, but that are expressed through art. And that book is coming out in 2 weeks. Khaled has a lot of followers, and
I saw on Twitter it's 500,000 or something.
Yeah.
Crazy number like that.
I think on Instagram he has 2.2 million followers.
Wow. Well,
he's been able to gain a lot of attention for the book, and we're really excited about it. We're reprinting it already. It hasn't even come out yet. So yeah.
One question. We do a lot of shows on Gaza. We actually have a 2-parter we're putting out right now about the update of what's going on since the ceasefire. But it's one of to us, it's a very important story, like one of the important stories of the day. And it's been reported on, it's been underreported, it's been misreported on. And it's also something where people who have opposed what the Israelis have done, the U.S. backing it, has generated a lot of backlash in the media, on college campuses, and politics. We've seen members of Congress primaried out because they oppose the genocide in Gaza. And I'm wondering that in publishing some of these graphic novels on Gaza and on Palestine, how much did you consider the risk? Why did you ultimately decide to take the risk in putting this out in the world?
I was going to say I never considered the risk.
Right.
But that's probably not true. I mean, I think I didn't ever hesitate because of the risk with either of the books that I've done. I the whole reason I started Street Noise was so that I could be free to do what I thought was right. And to me, um, shining a light on the humanity of the Palestinian people and the horror of the oppression of the occupation,
Hmm.
uh, even prior to the genocide, is so fundamental to anyone who sort of cares about humanity. I don't understand how you could see what's going on and not do something about it. So for me, there was no hesitation. I mean, I did wonder, like, what kind of backlash will one have? Like,
Hmm.
and, um,
I mean, it's a very reasonable thought to have. So,
yeah, yeah, no, and I mean, luckily, I can take a little bit of nasty comments on social media. I'm okay with that, and luckily, I
mm,
haven't. I mean, that's why I do what I do. If I was afraid of that kind of thing, then I might as well go back and work for the big publishers. That's, like I need to be, it makes me feel like there's a reason for Street Noise to exist. If we're going to publish things that other people would say, oh no, I shouldn't do that. I mean, luckily I'm not looking to be made president of a university, you know,
right.
luckily I don't have any career aspirations except doing exactly what I'm doing right now. So,
Right.
um, I'm not worried that what I'm doing, I feel like if that's the beauty at this stage in my life. I've done a lot of things. I've raised 2 kids and I've worked in publishing for 20 years and um, had even other careers even before that. And the beauty of being my age and doing exactly what I want to do is that I don't have to apologize. I don't have to worry. I don't have, it's like if I'm following my heart, I do have to worry and I do have to apologize. If I'm disrespecting someone, if I'm learning as I go, like how to speak to people, and respect their identities in different ways. But I feel like as long as I've given it thought and I'm following my heart and my ethics, like it doesn't seem that hard. That's why I don't understand what's wrong with the left or the middle or whatever we call those silly blue politicians. Like, well, how is it so hard? Just follow what you think is right. I mean, how can you possibly look at, 50,000 plus people who are just killed, like drones coming in and like killing little kids? Like, obviously that's not okay. Like, who
Yeah.
thinks that's okay? Like, obviously. So to me, there's um, no ambiguity there. And that's not to say that other people's voices shouldn't be heard either. I think, um, people's voices should be heard. But yeah, I'm extremely proud of the books that I've been able to work on that shine a light on the lives of Palestinian people.
Yeah. I will say I have much appreciation for you doing that. I have much appreciation for people who put it out there just to tell these stories. And also see this a lot in lefty news world, podcast world. Just a lot of people take a lot of chances just like talking about this and talking about the genocide and talking about the plight of Palestinians and putting Palestinians on the air or publishing them or what have you. So much appreciation for you and all of us who are still continuing to take these risks, even now to even get in person. So
Yeah. Well, but I want to be honest and say that I've also published one of the most incredible books that we published is called Silence Full Stop by Karina Shore. And Karina is an Israeli.
Mhm.
But the book is not about Israel and Palestine. the book is about her own experience. She was sexually assaulted as a young girl, and it's exploring, the ways in which that experience um, affected, and the trauma of that affected her growing up, and her behavior, her self-destructive behavior as an adolescent. And it's a very powerful um, book. And yes, I considered, as I was deciding whether to publish it or not, I did consider, well, wait a minute, she's Israeli. Like, if I publish this book, does that mean I'm, uh, you know, endorsing the Israeli position? Um, and I don't think so. I mean, from my perspective, she's a human being, and
Mhm.
she has had human experiences that we need to see. We all need to see each other as human in order to move forward. And, whether you're on one side or the other of a political divide doesn't mean that we should, you know, take away your humanity. Um,
I think that's part of what's led us here is that that has happened too much.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's complicated, but
Yeah. I'm gonna shift to another one of the graphic novels, a
okay.
different topic, which is Milk Without Honey by Hannah Farmos, which is about plight of the bumblebee, um, and actually is a discussion of, environmental and climate crises we're in. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about that and how does it link the plight of the bumblebee, this small little insect, to this sort of greater catastrophic moment we're in?
Well, thank you for asking about that book. It's a really, really beautiful, really important book.
The
And
art's great. I love all the yellow in it, by the way. It's just something appealing about that to me.
I know, isn't it? She's just done a masterful job. It's a gorgeous, it's sort of, we call it a graphic novel, but I also think it's sort of a gorgeous picture book for adults, um, about the importance of bee conservation and for our global ecosystem. And, I have sort of a list of topics in my head that are important to me that I hope that Street Noise will have a chance to do books about. And um, one thing that we hadn't really done before this was something on the environment, and um, the nature is extremely important to me. If we go into it, like, the two things that give me hope are art and nature.
Right.
One is human made, the other is science made. And they're both miraculous to me. So, and I'm horrified by what we're doing to this planet. And I was, I loved the book Silent Spring. I'm not old enough to have been around when it came out, but when I discovered it, um, I loved Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. And I thought that part of the beauty of it was how simple it was. And it opened people's eyes to things that they were taking for granted. And I think Hannah Harms has done something like that in her book, Milk Without Honey. Um, and so I was really thrilled to be able to publish it. Um, and it's gotten, I wasn't sure when I published it, would it work for Street Noise, because it is sort of different than what we've done in the past. And it's a beautiful hardcover, which we've never done a hardcover before. I had this idea that mostly what I like to do is paperbacks, because I like, the way I read is I like to throw them in my backpack and read them on the subway, or uh, read them, you know, in bed at night, or I like things to be portable and affordable. I don't want, I love big, beautiful, expensive books, but that wasn't what I'm about. That's not what Street Noise is here to do. We're here to make books that are accessible to people. But Milk Without Honey was proposed as a hardcover, and it's beautiful. And so we're sort of through it, we've been able to get into other markets of like shops that have sort of beautiful books on nature and like museum gift shops. One person that we had endorse the book is Dr. Jessica Ware, who is the chairperson of invertebrate zoology at the Museum of Natural History in New York. She is an amazing woman who her specialty is dragonflies, but she knows a lot about a lot of things. And so we've been able to get the book into museum gift shops and, botanic garden gift shops. And we brought it out in September of last year so people could buy it and give it as a Christmas gift or a holiday. So yeah, I think I'm really excited about it. I think it very artfully and subtly makes you aware of complicated things and the way that agriculture creates inhospitable environments for so many pollinators. It's really beautiful. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
And then the other environmental book, which I checked out, was Toxic Tropics by Jessica Weebley. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Oublié.
Oublié.
French.
Yeah. Which weaves together the story of honestly corporate capitalism and colonialism and racial injustice and environmental injustice. Could you tell us a little bit about that story? And also the other thing I appreciate, because my day job is I'm anti-corporate campaigner for an environmental group, but it tells the story of an environmental justice campaign. I'm wondering if you could actually just talk about that, about Toxic Tropics a bit.
Sure. Toxic Tropics is about this pesticide called chlordicone, which was used really heavily. It was used all over the world for a bit. And then it was quickly discovered that it was very, very toxic and was causing cancer and stuff. And it would get into it's a pesticide that was used primarily on banana crops and get into the soil and then get into the water supply. And they outlawed it worldwide, but they made a special exception for the banana crops in Martinique and Guadeloupe.
The French West Indies.
Yes. And the author, Jessica Oublié, is French, and she's a comics journalist, and she was visiting her family in Martinique, and it was all over the news, this thing about chlordicone. And her family was all talking about it, and so she got sort of sucked into it and decided to make it her next project. And she's so smart and so thorough. She's one of those like really brilliant journalists who, leaves no stone unturned and figures out all of the ramifications, the angles. She interviewed scientists and politicians and farmers and historians and to sort of sort through and figure out what had happened. We don't, in this country, we had DDT, which was the whole Silent Spring, Rachel Carson thing, which I think about. I thank Rachel Carson every summer when I see the osprey in such large numbers on the East Coast, because they weren't, when I was little, there were no osprey. And now there are, in large part because Rachel Carson said, stop using DDT. So
does it hurt the eggs?
Yes, it somehow made the eggs so weak or something that they wouldn't.
It made the shells thinner, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, chlordicone was a similar, a horrible toxic thing, but people in this country hadn't really heard much about it. But it was a a big scandal. They called it a scandal in France once all this news came out about it being so toxic. And, and then it was a political scandal because the people in Martinique and Guadeloupe were sort of seen as disposable or, in not as important as the cash crops of the bananas. So, but Jessica did all that research, and then she worked with an amazing artist, Nicola Gobi, who drew all the art, and then they even included there was a wonderful photographer who worked with them, who took pictures, so you can even see photographs to sort of see that this is all based on real interviews. These were real things that happened, and in the end, she's really cautioning us all to be more discerning and to really question the corporations that are making these decisions. And I think that, now with what's going on in Washington with Elon Musk and all of the oligarchs like taking over everything, it's even more important, like the lessons to be learned in this book of like a cautionary tale, like don't just sit and let them do it. Like, cause they will do whatever is in their best interest financially. And, if, we know this, it's like amazing that we still can be duped, all these many years later. But anyway, yeah, it's a really fantastic book that I'm really, really proud to have brought out into the world. It came out in France, called Tropics, or sorry, switch that, Toxique. And I worked with an amazing translator named Irene Vasquez, who did a brilliant job in translating this book. And together we edited it and tried to make it as really accessible to the reader, because Jessica, it's just, she's got so much information in there. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah. And to me, the tracing, it almost reads like a campaign plan in a way when you decide to take on one of these like major corporations who are doing some bad stuff in the world. So I as a campaigner, I really appreciated that. So
Exactly. Great. Well, she's coming. She's traveling to the US in the end of March and early April. She's going to be speaking at a number of universities across the East Coast. And we're really excited to have her. I think it's going to be a really great opportunity to get more word out about this important book.
that'd be great. Let us know, and maybe we can try and talk to her around that time when she's in the US. I have one last question because we're getting close to our time.
Sure.
What can we look forward to from Street Noise for 2025 and beyond?
Oh my goodness, beyond? I can't even get through 2025 in the next, we need this. It's so super exciting. So I'm really, really excited about 2025. We are going to be doing more books than we've ever done before. It's going to be a really big, it's our 5th anniversary. And our first book came out in May of 2020, right in the height of the pandemic. So we're coming up on 5 years, and we have so many wonderful books coming out. But the one that I really want to draw your attention to, which I think you and your listeners will be really, really interested in, is called "You Must Take Part in Revolution."
Mhm.
And
I was reading about that on your website right before.
Yep, that's the one. This is the book this is fiction. It's a near future dystopia. It's fiction, but this is the book that made me decide to have Street Noise expand into fiction. This was that important to me. When I read the proposal for this book, and I met the 2 authors, I said, if if Street Noise can publish this book, I will be over the moon. It's so amazing. And it's beyond my wildest dreams. The art is done by a world-renowned activist artist named Badiatsao. He's sometimes called China's Banksy. He was born in China, in mainland China, but was doing all sorts of activist art on the street, and sort of art critical of the Chinese government. So there was a warrant put out for his arrest some years ago, and he fled. So he's been living in exile in Australia ever since. But he's a world-renowned artist and he has like big solo art shows all over the world. He's been profiled on 60 Minutes. He's a big deal. And his art just is like astonishing. It's so incredible and beautiful and powerful. He's never done a graphic novel before. He's always done like big murals and cartoon. He does political cartoons, but this is the first time he's ever done sequential art, and he has taken to it like I never could have imagined. And the other author who worked with Badiatsao is Melissa Chan, and Melissa is an Emmy Award-nominated journalist who grew up in the United States, but was reporting on China, and was also, like Badiatsao, was reporting in sometimes an unfavorable way toward the Chinese government. And so she was kicked out of China and not allowed to report from there anymore. But she reports all over the world. She's done amazing things. And that's her day job, is she travels around the world reporting from places like North Korea and Cuba and Europe and all sorts of, Moscow, all sorts of places. But this book is, "You must take part in the revolution" is a quote from Chairman Mao. And it's a book about 3 young people who they meet at the 2019 Hong Kong protests. And so that is sort of in the past. That's sort of the prologue, or the early part of the book is in the past. And then some things happen. I'm not going to give anything away, but some things happen. And then we go out into the future. And it's really a cautionary tale about surveillance and authoritarian governments, and what it really makes you question what one should do, what lengths one would go to fight for freedom. There are no easy answers. This book does not give you easy answers. This is about challenging us each to think deeply. And but when I first acquired the book several years ago, the high-tech stuff seemed pretty high-tech. And it's amazing what's happened in the few years. Like now it doesn't seem that crazy anymore. It's like, and in fact, Badiatsao said, like, he's now he's worried that some of it's going to seem like, oh, it's old hat, like, because these have all come true. It's like life imitating art. And in fact, that the new Chinese AI thing, the Deep Seed, I think is what it's called, right?
DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, that's it. The authors did a little test on DeepSeek and asked it what it knew about this book. And they said that it thought for a little, and obviously it had information about it. And then suddenly it came up with this answer of like, oh, let's not talk about that right now, or something. It's got some crazy response. And so ArtNet, which is a publication, did a whole piece on that. And they interviewed Badiatsao about that, because it's really ironic that this AI bot from China is censoring this book that's all about censorship. And like, and governmental control of people and and the fight for freedom. So it's really, really, really beautiful. I mean, if anyone just opens it up and looks at the pages, you'll be sucked in right away because it's just for the art in of itself. But the story is brilliant. I worked with an amazing editor on it, and it's
Oh,
really
yeah. I really look forward to seeing it. It's coming out in March. I see on your website.
yep, just a few weeks from now.
Yep.
And they are coming. So Baritsao lives in Australia, and Melissa lives in Berlin. But they're coming and doing a tour. They're traveling around the East Coast and the West Coast. They have some really big events lined up, which is very exciting. They're launching the book first. I think it's in 2 weeks. It's going to be sort of a pre-launch in Taipei. So we're going to do it in Taipei first. I'm not going to be able to be there, and then they're coming here. Baritsao is going to be a guest of honor at the Mocha Fest, the comics festival in New York City.
Mhm.
And they're going to travel around. They're doing an event with Penn Literary, Penn America, and doing some events on the West Coast as well.
Excellent. We'll have to check that out.
I think in San Francisco. So I'll let you know where they're going to be.
Yeah, that would be great. We're at our time. I'm gonna wrap it on that because that was an amazing in out right there. So, folks, we've been talking with Liz Francis, who's the founder and publisher of Street Noise books. We'll put a lot of information about Street Noise in our show notes. If you like what you hear, and please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us on an audio platform, give us a rate and review. If you really like us, go to greenredpodcast.org and hit that support button or become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. Liz, it's been great talking to you today. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and us finally getting on and be able to talk about all of this.
Thank you, Scott. It's been really great to talk to you.
Yep. Everyone else out there, make a lot of trouble and misbehave, and talk to you again real soon.